Welcome to Elder Care Illuminated, Torchlight's caregiving podcast. Elder Care Illuminated addresses the ins and outs and ups and downs of caring for your loved ones. Join us for interesting conversations with elder care specialists, geriatric care managers, attorneys, and ordinary people with extraordinary caregiving experiences.
Welcome to Torchlight's podcast, Elder Care Illuminated. Today, we are going to discuss a subject that no one wants to talk about, especially with their elderly parents or the aunt or uncle who they help take care of. Too private, too intrusive, too fraught. Today, we are going to talk about money, not sex, not politics, heaven forbid, and not religion. My guest is Barbara Boustead, founder and CEO of Mary's Daughter in Madison, Wisconsin. Welcome, Barbara.
Hello, Lenore. Thank you for having me today.
Barbara, first I want to tell you how much I love the name of your company. It says so much about how you feel about your work, and it reminds me how names can say something about the generation in which a person was born. I'm Jane's daughter. A few years from now, the caregivers will be Madison's daughter, Mackenzie's son, after we pass through all the Jasons and Jennifers. So, am I avoiding the subject too? Let's talk about money. There often comes a time in a person's life when managing the day-to-day finances becomes too much. Family members discover that bills aren't being paid, checks haven't been deposited, there are dunning letters in the mail. Before we talk about how we get from that situation to professional money management by a person like you, please tell us what a daily money manager is and how you become one.
Yes, well, thank you again for having me. I am so excited to be here. A daily money manager is a professional who handles money management, finances that a person, and we'll get into more of that, but we do a lot more than just handle money. And again, we'll talk more about that. But a daily money manager handles the bills, reconciles the checkbook, makes sure that there are no scams or just anything that should not be on a statement, either a credit card or investment banking statement. So we oversee the finances for our clients.
And I understand from what you're saying that there's more than daily money management that you do. There's a much broader range of tasks that you become involved in, right?
Certainly. We actually become many daily money managers, work a lot with the financial professionals as well as healthcare professionals and other people who are impacting and involved with our clients' lives. Oftentimes we take the liaison role where, because we are seeing the client on a regular basis in their home, or even if we're working remotely, we are in charge and working with their finances. So we're involved with maybe the financial professionals, the banking professionals. I'm working currently with a client and her realtor because she's downsizing and she will be selling her condo. So I'm helping with managing some of the details around that condo sale. So we're involved with things like that, anything having to do with money with our clients, and of course with the family members.
When you, for example, get involved and work with the health insurers, I can picture from dealing with my own family's health insurance stuff, the bills that come in and how confusing it could be, especially on Medicare. When you're juggling Part A, Part B, Part D, do you have to get some sort of validation that you are legitimate to talk to the insurance company? How is it that they will talk to you when you call?
Well, the first thing would be to work with my client around making sure that I have permission from them to speak on their behalf. So I work with the client, and if they are elderly and have power of attorneys for health care and for finances, which might be their adult children, then I would be working with them as well. And once I have what's called a letter of engagement or a contract which includes releases of information for both medical and financial. Then I'm able to work with the healthcare professional around, say, getting things straightened out as far as bills, making sure that the Medicare statements are correct, and again, advocating on behalf of my client. Sometimes with banks, with financial institutions, they ask for my credentials. And so I'm able to give them, as a daily money manager, I have a background check. So my background has been checked. I've been vetted. Daily money managers are we're not licensed or regulated yet. And that may be coming. But for now, what I am able to do is to, for instance, work with the bank to have them see my information. If they ask for instance, some of my credit card information, or rather my social security. Sometimes they do that. I'm willing to do that on behalf of the business and on behalf of working with clients. But usually it's enough that I have a release form and that I am showing them my standards of practice from ADAM, the American Association of Daily Money Managing, for daily money managers, and also our ethics. And when they have that information, I'm usually able to get the information I need on behalf of my clients.
So you've got a release. That sounds really important.
Yes.
And I'm really glad to hear that banks and insurers are going to ask for that. So if you're actually paying bills, are you writing and signing a check? Are you writing the check and the person is signing it if they're able? Tell me about the actual nitty gritty part of paying somebody else's bill.
That is actually my favorite part because in my case, I am in my client's home or assisted living facility. Most of them, I have an office, but usually that's to meet with professionals and the state attorneys and other people. But when I'm in my client's home, we take out their checkbook. Most of my clients like using their checkbook. They're from the era where everything was paper. A lot of daily money managers work remotely, and we can talk about that separately. But I am in my clients' homes. And what I enjoy is I'm able to get the checkbook. They share it with me. We usually have a little basket. There are other people in the home, and I want to make sure things are kept safely and kept secure. We have a safety deposit box that I have access to with the client in the room. And so once we have the checkbook, we go through the bills that need to be paid. I usually write the checks out and my client signs them. I really work, I call it as a team with my client. If we're doing online banking, then I access the account online for bill pay with the client in the room. Many daily money managers who work remotely are able to do that with releases, again, with the client, with specific unique passwords that the client and they have worked out. But in my case, I really enjoy being in the home, being in the client's space to encourage and support them doing as much of the bill pay as they can. And that might mean some clients like to put the stamp on. Some clients aren't able to do that, but they might be able to review the bill with me. And even if they can't understand or they've lost the ability to really discern what the bill is saying, we're able to talk about that. And I'll say, this is a bill from the utility company, and it looks pretty accurate. But I'm going to check on this because it seems a little higher than what it usually is. What do you think? And so they'll say, well, I've had my air conditioner on quite a bit, or we'll talk about just having a conversation so that they're engaged and feel they're a part of the process. Once the bills are all made out, I make sure the client signs them. I've had clients who have had multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's, and so they may have a stamp they use, or we work out some other way for them to have their signature. And if it is a stamp that I have to use on behalf of them, I make sure that that's very clear with the bank and any financial institution that I'm working with. If I'm making out the bills and their adult child will be signing them, and that happens rarely because usually they don't have the time to do that, because if they did, they would be doing that. But I've had some in the past who said, I just want them all made out, know everything's accurate, because mom or dad had been making lots of mistakes. And then I'll come in and I'll sign them. But that doesn't happen as often as it used to. Now it's just take care of it, let it be done, make sure they're in the mail. And that's what I do for that meeting with the client for that time. And I make sure that I take it to the mailbox. Many of my clients want that deposited in the post office, and I make sure I assure them that I'm doing that. And they feel good about it, and so do I.
I imagine that over time there's going to be more and more online banking that you'll be involved with. But I noticed one thing, and I failed to mention this or ask you about it in our opening remarks. You have a background in social work. And that sounds like it is tremendously helpful, because what I'm hearing, or what I was hearing you saying, is very gentle and respectful way of working with a person who is finding their capacities diminished for one reason or another. Either they're having a physical issue, or perhaps they're dealing with an emerging dementia. But you sound like you're very sensitive. You're not just about, let's get these bills paid.
Exactly.
You're about understanding where this person is and where they may be going. When you're typically brought in, tell us how you're usually contacted and how the relationship evolves. Is it the client who calls you, or the family member, or do you get a call from the doctor?
All of the above. Yes. And just to backtrack a little bit, this started for me as an encore career. You're right. I love my career as a social worker. I'm still licensed as a clinical social worker. So I continue to go to conferences and continue in that. Even though I'm not doing social work per se, it's infused in the work I'm doing as a daily money manager.
Yeah, I think you're still doing social work, Barbara.
Yes. and I claim that very proudly. But I like to differentiate that, because many people will want to have me become their therapist, or they'll want me to case manage. And I need to, make sure they understand that I will call in the social worker, and I will be able to share information about what I have and the knowledge I have as a social worker to explain what's going on. But I will not take on that. For instance, looking at assisted living facilities or doing an assessment, even though I could do that. I want to make sure that I stay in my lane, I call it, as a daily money manager, and work with the finances. And part of it for me is about starting this. I had not heard of daily money managing, but I became interested after my mom, who was bedridden, her name was Mary, and she needed some help with some things. My sister doing wonderful caregiving and supplying all of the support she needed, along with home health aides and care attendants. But the creditors were calling, and the finances, it was just very difficult to cover all the bases. And I like working with money and balancing checkbooks. So I offered to do that. And then my mom said, who does this for other people? Who advocates with the doctors? Who speaks up on behalf of seniors when bills are, say, incorrect, or they have not the funds to pay? So because as a social worker, I'm an advocate for my clients, it was easy for me to get into that role of speaking with the doctor, calling the creditors, making sure that they understood that my client did want to make payments on the bills, but didn't have the adequate funds to do so. So could we work something out? So that's how I got started. So because I've done a lot of working with professionals in the healthcare fields and now in the financial professions, I get calls from estate attorneys, CPAs call me quite a bit. They start working with their clients and find that there's impairment, that they're not bringing in their documents and the taxes in an organized way anymore. So I might get a call saying, Barbara, I have someone who seems to be needing some help. I get calls from healthcare professionals. I am involved with the Alzheimer's and Dementia Alliance here in the Wisconsin area. So I have calls from people in that realm, as well as from, I can't tell you, a number of agencies that, because they knew me in my previous role, they'll call me because they now know that I do daily money management work.
And when you're contacted and you go and meet your client or your potential client for the first time, I imagine you've seen all manner of paperwork disasters. And knowing from my own experience what my mom kept, which was pretty much everything including envelopes, you must come across some really interesting messes to sort out.
Oh, yes. And what's especially sad for me is seeing how organized and how well maintained records were for some of my clients. And once they started, becoming more impaired, how quickly things fell apart. Because I can go back. I had one client, she had been a researcher, and so she had files dating back to the 70s, and she had downsized from a huge home, but brought everything with her. So we were taking out shoeboxes and bags and more bags of just things that needed to be shredded. They were everywhere. She had closets full, piled to the rafters of things that she didn't want to get rid of because she didn't know what she might need in the future. So that would be one example. Or going through what looked like a very organized bag of shredding to find that she had shredded her RMD, her required minimum distribution check. I saw pieces of it. So that had to be reissued. But she didn't realize that that's what it was. So really finding finding things behind sofa cushions, looking for, like I said, tax documents, knowing that they came home because I had been working with a client, and I'm saying, so I know it came. Where could it be? Or they opened their mail watching TV on the sofa. So I just am digging and found it there. The dining room table usually is full of old circulars from the papers, magazine subscriptions. But a telltale sign, for instance, is checking on the magazine subscription to see when it expires. Some go out 3, 4, 5, 6 years because they keep paying the same subscription. And that's a telltale sign that they've not been able to discern that they keep paying the same bill.
And the magazine companies keep sending the bill, which is really irritating. Yes. And it is hard to keep track. You're working in such a sensitive area. And I appreciate when you said before that you want to make it clear and make sure you stay in your lane, that it's very important in the work that you do to make sure that there are clear and understandable boundaries. Since it is so sensitive and there is a potential for vulnerability for yourself as well as for your client, what are the rules you have to live by to develop the trusting relationship and to make sure that there's a clear understanding of what those boundaries are?
Oh, that is an excellent question, and one that I really spend time with my clients and their family members, and actually any other professional that I work with on behalf of my clients, and also just educating the public. And that is that I start with an initial meeting where I don't take any information. I don't take Social Security numbers. I'm just meeting to see if it's a good fit. If I'm able to provide the client with what they need, it is definitely something I do not charge for. It may take an hour. And if their son or daughter or family member is not around, the adult child is not around, and they're going to be involved, I'll come back and maybe meet with them. Again, at no charge, because I don't want any barriers for someone to meet with me to see if this is going to work out for both of myself and the client. So I start off with that. And if we get, into the meeting to start the work, then I actually have a letter of engagement where I spell out exactly what I will do and also what I won't do. Like I don't do taxes. I may take the information to the accountant, but I will not file taxes. There are some DMMs, daily money managers, who are accountants. So they have the ability to do that, and that is fine. But I do not. And so I make sure they know that I don't do that. I also don't provide financial investment advice. We review finances, but I work with their investor, financial planner or their financial advisor around whatever investments they have. And I might review those investments, but I work with and I don't make any recommendations as to what they should invest in. So I'm very clear about that from the outset. I also share that I have insurance, errors and omissions insurance that I cover, as much as $1 million if I make a mistake with any of their financial information. I make sure that they know that I have, in addition to the errors and omissions insurance, that's through ADAM, again, the American Association of Daily Money Managers. It's called the Dominion and Lloyd's of London Insurance. I make sure that specifically covers me But just from a personal standpoint, I also took out an umbrella policy just to make sure, which I share so that they know I take this seriously, that I do not ever want to make a mistake. But if something should happen, I would want to make it right. So that's one of the things that I let them know. And in addition, as I think I've mentioned, every 2 years, Adam requires a criminal background check. Well, I already get that on an annual basis because I'm a member, a vendor, a service provider for, it's called Sharing Active Independent Lives, which is a member organization here in the area. For instance, if they need a daily money manager, I've already been vetted. So they have no question if they call me in when we have our first meeting. I am someone that's been recommended by SAIL, SAIL, and so they don't even ask anymore. They say, oh, you're a SAIL provider. And once people know that, in addition to Adam, they're pretty clear that I'm someone they could trust.
And we will put, when we publish this podcast, we will put links in the show notes to those two organizations, because I think for our audience, which is typically the adult children of an older or disabled adult, this is great advice for them in terms of questions to ask. If they're looking for a daily money manager, if their mom lives in St. Louis and they live in Trenton, New Jersey, and they actually can't do it themselves, you have laid out some really important things to think about when you're talking to somebody. What are their credentials? What kind of insurance? That sort of thing.
And just so you know, on the Adam website, we have how to find a DMM and how to get started. So a link to that would be great, but it talks about all of the things, our code of ethics, our standards of practice, and making sure that the person you hire can answer those questions to your satisfaction. So thank you so much for including that.
Yeah, because you want to protect them and you want to protect yourself.
Yes.
And transparency and insurance sound like really good ways to do that. I can imagine the older person who is grateful for and embraces the help and welcomes the opportunity to give up this chore that they maybe never liked in the first place. What I can see more easily is the person who's suspicious of handing over these responsibilities to a stranger, and maybe also the family member. Suppose I'm the primary caregiver, but I have siblings who are like, what? You're hiring a stranger? How do you deal with negotiating the period during which family members and the client are not comfortable?
Yes, I think that's where it has been very helpful for me to have my social work experience, because I really enjoy these kinds of family discussions where I can answer the questions both about my ability to work with the client and what I do to keep things confident, their information confidential. I talk about the safety measures I do with the fact that I work in their home, that I keep my information or their information in their home. If there's anything that I need to have to work on, it's password protected. I share all of that information with anyone who is interested in wanting to hear how I work. We start with that. But then there's questions about, well, are you going to tell my brother something that I should know and he shouldn't know? And so I actually have a conversation about who are the people that need to be involved. Because one of the questions I have, it's kind of like, who needs to know? Sometimes the adult child is someone that has been, unfortunately, taking advantage of their loved one. And so it's clear that they should not be taking on any of the financial responsibilities. And that is why I was hired. And so I will say up front, the reason I have been hired is to be a part of your loved one's life, your mom or dad or whoever, grandma, and help them with the finances, because they are not able to do that and don't want to have a negative relationship with you. So I'm kind of the buffer. And so if you have been taking, say, allowance of $300, $400, $500 a month, and I'm looking at the finances, your family member, your loved one, they can't afford that. So I'm there to preserve their money so that they can have that to live on. And I understand that because you don't know, you think that they have all the money in the world. So what I do is explain that if in fact your mom, grandma wants to provide you with an allowance, it will be a reasonable one given their finances. And I'll work with you around managing that. Sometimes that goes, oh, I thought they were just, whatever. And I sometimes talk about it being with siblings, for instance. I may do a group email. I work with one particular person, but I have the permission of their mom or dad to inform everyone about what's going on. Maybe not all the particulars in terms of what's got paid, what didn't get paid, that type of thing, but just to know that things are being handled well. So it really kind of depends on who has the power of attorney, who has the POA responsibility. If the person is competent and able to manage their own affairs, I let that dictate who I inform.
A lot of responsibility, Barbara.
It is.
But I can see that you probably encounter the range of absolutely marvelous relationships to work with, and then some that are a little bit more difficult. So if someone wants to find a daily money manager, you've mentioned Adam, how should they go about doing so? And I know that you've said there are questions to ask on the Adam website. Maybe you could just highlight what are the 3 most important things someone should look to before hiring a candidate?
Well, I think really, because again, I work with seniors and veterans, and so very specific service and a very specific client type. So one of the great things about Adam is if you have that in mind, you go to the Adam website and it says find a DMM, and then you can put in the state, zip code, and the name or keyword. Like in my case, it would be seniors maybe, or if you were looking for someone in Madison, Wisconsin, you could put that in there. So kind of finding if you want that person to be in that area. But many of clients and many daily money managers work remotely. So you would want to ask if you might find someone you don't need them to actually come in and work with you or your loved one. What you want is someone who can just take care of the bills and do that remotely. And that is becoming more and more popular for many of the daily money managers I talk with. But finding out the scope of work, so making sure that there's a good match, making sure that we have daily money managers who work primarily with younger people, millennials, and they do an awesome job. They do a great job at that. But you don't want to find them and say, well, you work with my mother. She's 89 years old and can you work with her? That wouldn't be a good match. So finding out what the scope of their work is.
That's a really good point because there are a variety of populations who could really benefit from a daily money manager. So adults with certain disabilities, younger adults might benefit. I know adults who have a sibling with a serious mental illness can seriously benefit from having a money manager, especially people with bipolar, where there are times when they're off their meds and what happens with finances is really serious. So it sounds like people have specialties. You work with seniors. Other people might work with people with intellectual disabilities. So that is good to look for somebody whose interests and experience matches what you need.
Exactly. And asking about the ways that a daily money manager that you call, how have they assisted their clients? Are they expert in health insurance? Do they work as a fiduciary, take more responsibilities? I do not work as a fiduciary for most of my clients, although I have become a trustee because a person had no one else. But it was very specific to that situation. Maybe someone, has experience working with couples or something like that. So you're exactly right. Finding out and asking the DMM, even if they're in the location you want, what their specialization is, because, hone down on that. And I also think if they're a member of Adam, they have to adhere to the code of ethics and standards of practice, but you can talk about the cost. I like being transparent. I have an hourly rate, and although we don't talk about that specifically because as an industry, I think there's some guidelines around that, but it can be affected by the region. So asking specifically
of course,
for DMMs that you're interviewing, what their rates are, how do they charge? I offer an in-person interview at no charge to just get started. Some people pay for that because it takes a lot of time, and they're working in some rural areas, so they travel a lot further than I do. So being able to ask those questions, I think would be really important. And if they're insured, again, I think it's been something that I've been very proud to share with professionals, other professionals, because in an industry that's not regulated per se, we have to do everything we can to make sure that what we offer is something that where people can trust us, that we have credibility with other professionals. And even though people oftentimes say my social work degree and 40 plus years gives me that, I like to say as a daily money manager, the experience and the education that Adam has offered me over the past, 9 years has been incredible. And what I've really appreciated is that they continue to offer top-notch webinars, speakers, information on a regular basis. I attend a conference every year so that I can be as well informed about the latest scams, how to protect my clients, and how to protect their information.
You are giving all the people out there who are going to think about this as an option to help their loved one a lot of great advice.
Oh, my
boy,
goodness,
the scams
yes.
are pretty amazing.
Wisconsin is such a trusting state. I think we have one of the highest amounts of, highest numbers of scams. And, it's awful. Utility companies, are represented as you need to go get a gift card. That doesn't sound right. But for me, many of my clients, several of them had done that before I started working with them. Or I'll come in and they say, I got that call, Barbara, the one you said I shouldn't answer. I said, what happened? Well, they told me about a gift card, but I told them I have to check with my daily money manager first because she helps me with my money. I'm so glad you did.
That's great. Well, Barbara, thanks for spending so much time with us today. I think Mary did a good job raising a daughter like you.
Oh, thank you so much.
People they're so reluctant to reach out for help and they don't know where to find it. And you've given us great information about where to turn when the paperwork and the bills and the whole organizational aspect of life becomes overwhelming. So I am so happy to share your wisdom with the world and those links that you mentioned. Listeners, check out the Adam website that we'll have a link to. It's the Association of Daily Money Managers. And just a reminder that Elder Care Illuminated is a production of Torchlight, which supports working caregivers and their families. If you don't have access to Torchlight in your employer's benefit plan, ask your employer to call us. Contact information is on our website, torchlight.care. And you all take care now, and we'll see you next time on Elder Care Illuminated.
Thanks for listening to Elder Care Illuminated, a Torchlight caregiving podcast. Find other episodes of Elder Care Illuminated on iTunes, Spreaker, and Podcast Go. If you're interested in bringing Torchlight Elder or any of Torchlight's other caregiving products to your workplace, please contact info@torchlight.care. That's info@torchlight.care.